Welcome back. So in the last session, we have discussed about data types. We have understood what are the various data types present like integer, float, boolean and string. In this session, we'll talk about something called as variables. What exactly are variables? Why do we use variables? Let's understand that. So in general, guys, whenever you're writing some code or when you're doing some kind of programming, right, you'll be writing a lot of codes and you'll be using a lot of codes, right? So for example, you write your first line of code like this. This is your code and you'll be writing your code. And here you have some data, right? I want to use this data somewhere in the 10th line or a 20th line or a 30th line. How can I use that? So if I want to use this data somewhere in 10th line or 20th line or 30th line, I should save this data somewhere or whatever output I got in the first line, maybe I have to save it somewhere and such that I can use it 10th line, 20th line and 30th, something like that. So that place where you can store your data is nothing but your variable. So I can say a variable is nothing but a memory, a temporary memory, a reserved memory for us to store some information, right? Perfect. So a variable is something which we can store some information, and why it is called as variable means it can be changed. So once we store some information, that particular data can be changed whenever we want. Whenever we want to modify that particular data in that particular variable, we can change it. Okay. Now, how do you use variables or how do you declare variables? Means for every variable, you need to give a variable name for sure. Like it's like a data name, variable name we call it as, and that particular variable name you can use. It's like a name such that I can use it in future for getting that particular data. As simple as that. So how do you declare a variable using your variable name? Okay. So here one more important point I have to take here is Python. Python is basically a dynamically typed programming language. Python is a dynamically typed programming language. This is very important. So what is meant by dynamically typed language? Let me talk about this. If you generally talk about other programming languages like Java, if I talk about Java, because I'm comparing Python with Java always, Java is a statically typed language. So what happens in a statical type of language means if you have a variable called as, for example, I want to declare 10. 10 is integer, right? You know the data type of 10 is integer. I want to store this 10 in a variable name called as a. Variable name, guys, it should start with alphabet. It should not start with numerical value. That is important thing. And variable name can be anything. Anything. It can be ABC underscore 1. You can have like this, but you cannot have 1 underscore ABC, something like this. So always your variable name should start with alpha. Okay. Let me take variable name as a. Okay. Simple. Now in this particular variable name called as a, I want to store a value called as 10. If you talk about Java programming language, if you don't know Java, don't worry about that. But I'm just comparing Java with Python. Then only you can understand what is meant by dynamically typed programming language, right? So, for example, in a variable name called as a, I want to store 10. How can I store? As 10 is integer, I should store like this: int a equal to 10, something like this. Now, here you can just clearly see that as I'm storing 10 in this, I'm explicitly telling to my compiler, or I'm explicitly telling to my program that I'm storing an integer here, and that is 10. This is nothing but called as static typed. Static type means once you declare your data type, you cannot change it. Means, for example, a is 10. It is static. I mean, for example, if I want to make a as string or if I want to make a as float, you cannot do that because already you declared a as string. You cannot store a float value. It means after storing a is equal to 10 here, you cannot make a is equal to 10.5, or you cannot make a is equal to some text value here. It is not possible because already you stored 10 here, right? So this is called a static type, but Python is a dynamically typed. So what is meant by dynamically typed? Let's see that. So in dynamically typed, it's the same thing. If I want to store in a dynamical type of programming language like Python, it's very simple. You can simply say a is equal to 10. So here, the difference, if you observe, here you're not explicitly giving the data type, right? You're not explicitly giving the data type. So what happens here is your Python interpreter, based on the data whatever you are giving here, okay, based on the data whatever you are giving here, based on that, it will automatically understands what is the type you are providing. Means automatically your a will become integer because you are giving it as integer. This is called as dynamically typed programming language. Means you can also change it. For example, if I want to make it LO, A as LO, automatically it changes because it is dynamically typed. So based on the data you're giving, automatically the type changes. This is called as a dynamically typed language. Okay. So in this way, you'll be declaring variables in Python. So it's very simple. How do you declare the variable? The syntax is something like this. Okay. First is variable name. Okay. Equal to the value, whatever you want to give. Okay. The variable name and value. That's it. There is no other things you want to do. Okay. Let's see how can you do that. How can you declare variables and how can you use variables in Python. Okay. Let's go back to the Jupyter notebook. So I'll just declare the same variable a is equal to 10. So it's very simple. You can simply say a equal to 10. That's it. As simple as that. So in a variable name called as a, in a variable name called as a, 10 is stored. So you can use 10 when you want to use, for example, I want to get this 10 somewhere later on. I can use it, and it's more of a temporary memory. Means what? Once you close this program, once you close your system, and once you close your program, this variable, this memory will be removed. That's the reason we call it as temporary memory. So this particular memory persists until your program is running. Once your program is completely done, your variables will be vanished. That is very important point. Now let's start using this. Now I say a is equal to 10, and if I want to use it after this, you can simply say only a. You can simply say a because as it is interactive, you can directly get it. No, there is not a print here, but if you write print also, not a problem. I told you, right? If you're right, you should write print only when it is non-interactive, but your IPv4 is interactive, so you can write directly say a. But I would recommend writing print. Not a problem either way. So print a, you're getting 10. Perfect, right? Now if I just say type of a, integer. So you can see here in a variable called as in a variable name called as a, it's a variable name. In a you have the variable called as, you have a data called as 10, right? I can use a anywhere now. I can use a like this simply. Okay. Now I want to change my a. I want to make it float. So you can see like this. A is equal to 10.5, something like that. It became float right now. So you can see in the same program, I'm changing my a value to other data type. The same thing is not possible in other programming languages, static programming languages. So if I say type of a, now it is float. In the same way, I can say a is equal to hello world, maybe hello world, right? It's a string, obviously. So type of a is obviously str. And if I say a is equal to true, and the type of is obviously boolean. So like this, I can give a string or boolean or whatever I want. These are declare variables, or you can say b is equal to a simple character. A simple this one. It's obviously a string. So like this, I can work with your variables. This is how you'll be creating a variables. Okay. Now I'll just show a small use case, guys. A simple adding of two numbers using variables. So for example, I'm having a variable called as 10 and another variable called as 20. Okay. Now what I will do, I'll just say c is equal to a plus b, as simple as that. Okay. Cool. Now if I just see, you'll be getting your 30. It's very common, right? Print c is very common. You'll be getting 30. So you can see how Python is very easy to code, right? The same code, if you want to write in other programming languages, it would take a lot of lines. But here in 3 or 4 lines, you're able to get it. And the other way of declaring variables is, if you want to declare multiple variables at a single line also, you can do that. Means, for example, I have declared a is equal to 10 and b is equal to 20 like this, right? But the more Pythonic way of declaring is something like this. You can do like this: a comma b equal to 10 comma 20. This is another way of declaring variable. So here what happens is, as you are giving 10 first, so 10 will become a and 20 will become b. So as simple as that. This is another way of Pythonic way of declaring variables. So you can see now, if I say a will become 10 and b is equal to 20. Not only two variables, you can declare multiple variables. You can say a comma b comma c comma d equal to 10 comma 20 comma 30 comma 40. So like this, in a single go, you can declare multiple variables. So if you see your d is 40, and if you see your c will become 30. Like this, in a single go, you can declare multiple variables. That is one more way of declaring variables. Cool. So in this way, we are adding two variables. Cool, and you are getting this result. Very good. Now I just want to show one more thing. For example, if a is hello and B is something like world. Okay, and if I say A plus B, C is equal to A plus B, it becomes hello world. I mean, this called as string concatenation. Okay, this called as what? String concatenation means this is a string and this is a string. When you're adding two strings, we call it as string concatenation. You can add two strings like this. If you want a space here, below after world, you can give a space. This is one option you have. Or when you're adding these two, you can give a space like this, plus, and you're adding with a space like this. Means what you're doing, you're having a hello here and you're giving in quotes, you're giving a space and adding B. So like this also you can do. Okay, hello world with space, right? Either way, it's your wish, whichever way is flexible. This is called as string concatenation, adding two strings. Okay, now I just want to show one more thing to you. So A is equal to maybe Python and B is equal to 10. Now I'll just say C is equal to A plus B. So before running this code, guys, I just want you to think, what is the output of this? You can just pause this video and just think what might be the output of this. And the output is basically the error. It says that we cannot concatenate string to integer. Only we can only concatenate string to string. But means what? You cannot concatenate string to another integer or float. For example, your float also, you cannot concatenate. So string concatenation with numbers is not possible. Means you cannot do Python plus 10 or Python plus 10.5 like this. If your 10 was in quotes, so even though it is a number, but as it is in quotes, it is assumed as a string, and you'll be getting, you can get like this. Your output will be Python 10, right? You'll be getting out Python 10 because 10 is in quotes. 10 is assumed as a string. But if 10 is not in quotes, you'll not get that output. You'll get an error saying that you cannot concat string with string. So from this error, I want to raise one more point saying that Python is a static type programming language. Python is a dynamic type programming language. Sorry, dynamic type and not static but strong type programming language. Okay, one more point you can write here, that Python is a strong type programming language, both dynamic and strong type. So what is meant by strong type? Strong type means in a strong type programming language, you'll not be allowed to add a string with integer or float, I mean numbers. Okay, or this kind of concatenation is not possible if for a stronger type programming language. Okay, so Python is both dynamically typed and a stronger typed programming language. Okay, so I'll just show a simple a diagram to you. Just have a look at this. So these are the various programming languages which are dynamic and strong. So if we just look at this, if we just have a look at this diagram, you can clearly see that Python comes under dynamic and strong category. Okay, and if you look at Java which we're talking about, it comes under strong but static category. Static means what? You should declare int a is equal to something like that, but it comes under strong category only. Strong means what? It doesn't allow string and integer concatenation. Other languages you can have a look. C and C++ comes under weak and static. Weak in the sense you can also add JavaScript comes under weak and dynamic, something like that. So you can have different programming languages along with what are static and what are dynamic here in this way. So you can just have a look at this. I'll just show a small example of what exactly is weak programming language is. Then you'll be getting a clear-cut clarity. Okay. I'll just show a simple code of JavaScript you can understand. Okay. So for that, I can just open my console and I can just show like this. For example, don't worry about whatever I'm writing here, or you know to do along with me. It's just a simple example of what exactly is weak type programming language. We talked about strong, right? I'll show the example of weak type. So for example, if I'm declaring a variable called as 10 here, in this is nothing but your JavaScript, you are declaring a variable called as 10, and here you're declaring a variable called as 20 hello maybe. Okay, now I'll just say a plus b. So if I say a plus b, it is allowing to add. I'm getting 10 hello, right? I'm getting 10 hello means string. This is nothing but a weak typed. Okay, so it's an integer and a string. It is able to add, but our Python will not allow that. because it's a strong type programming language. So in this way, you'll be working with variables. We'll be working with the data types in this way, right? Thank you, guys.